Hi there, folks. I'm going to give you a very brief introduction to HTML. Now, if you have written any HTML at all, if you know what HTML is and how it's used, this video is not for you. If you've heard of HTML, but you don't know what it is, you don't know why it's used, or how it's used, or what HTML looks like, then this video is for you. So let's have a look at what HTML is and how it's used to build a website. HTML is Hypertext Markup Language. Now, HTML is not a programming language like C or JavaScript or PHP or Python or Perl, but it is a markup language. It's used to mark up the text that we use on our websites. So how do we use it? What do we use it for? HTML code is literally the building blocks of the web. We build websites with it. Any website or web application starts with HTML. In the same way that you would start building a house with materials like lumber or bricks, you would start building a website with HTML. It's literally the structure of your website. Later, you'll add styles, make it pretty, make it user-friendly. You'll add other programming languages like JavaScript or PHP to make it functional, to make it do really cool things. But HTML is where a web application or website starts. HTML elements are the building blocks of the web. This is why a lot of people learn HTML first, and then they learn CSS, and then they learn a language like JavaScript. You can't really paint a house and make it pretty until you have the structure of the house in place. Moreover, you wouldn't install the plumbing or electrical on a house until you've built the foundation, the framing, the walls of the house. So you can think of HTML as sort of the framing or the foundation of web development. CSS is the styling or the appearance of your web applications and websites, and other functional languages like JavaScript are going to allow your web applications and websites to do things beyond merely exist on the web. So the first step then is learning HTML. What does HTML code look like? Well, if you've never seen a line of code in HTML, it's actually pretty easy to understand. This is a line of HTML code. Now, if it looks intimidating at first, don't worry. We'll break down the parts so that you can easily understand what's happening here. Let's take a look at this line of HTML code bit by bit. First, we have the type of the HTML tag. Here, this is denoted by a P. The P inside this HTML tag denotes a paragraph tag. There are a number of different types of HTML tags, which we'll look at later down the line, such as H1 or H2 tags, section tags, div tags, strong tags, and p tags. But for now, note that inside the angular brackets at the beginning of the line of code and the angular brackets at the end of the line of code, we'll see the type of tag. In this case, the p, meaning that this is a paragraph tag. Inside that first set of angle brackets, we see what is called the opening tag. This is the opening tag of this line of HTML code. And inside the angle brackets at the end of this line of code is the closing tag. We open this line of code with a paragraph tag and we close it with the closing paragraph tag. Notice that the closing tag has not only the angle brackets, but it also has a forward slash. Most, though not all, HTML tags have closing tags, and those closing tags include a forward slash just inside the first angle bracket. This opening tag has an attribute of class. Opening tags don't necessarily have attributes, but they often do. There are a number of different types of attributes like class, ID, style, href, source. We'll talk about those in another video. And that attribute is going to have a value. The value will be inside quotation marks. So for the attribute class of this particular paragraph tag, the value of the class is lead. It doesn't matter what that means. We'll learn that later. Just note that inside an opening HTML tag, there may be attributes that have values. And finally, the content. This is a paragraph. This is the content that will actually show up on our website. If we were to write this line of code, the opening tag and closing tag, along with the attribute and value, tells us what to do with the content. But the content is what actually shows up on your screen when you write this line of code. So again, this is one line of HTML code. It may look a little scary at first, but once you start writing HTML, lines of code like this are going to be so common that it'll be hard to believe that it once looked strange to you. Now, this entire line of code is what we call an HTML element. So we broke down each of the particular parts, the opening and closing tags, the attribute, the value of the attribute, and the content. And what we call this entire line of code is an HTML element. This is a paragraph element. Now, let's take a look and see what happens when we write a line of code like this. I'm going to open up my text editor and start an HTML file. If you don't have or use a text editor yet, if you don't know what that is, we'll talk about that in another video. But I do just want to show you how easy it is to write that line of HTML code and make that show up in your browser. Now, I'm going to start with a little bit of a shortcut here. All I've done is used a shortcut to get my HTML file started with the basic lines of code that any HTML file would start with. Now, let's write a line of code and see how we can make that show up in our browser. Let's take a p tag. We don't need an attribute, so we'll just use our opening tag. We'll write some content. Let's go for the classic hello world. Let's close it. And we now have an HTML file that would actually show up in our browser. How would we make that happen? Well, let's save this file as an HTML file. It has to have the extension .html after the file name. I'll save it to my desktop. Save. Now, all we need to do is open this file in our browser. So I'm going to right click on this file. I'm going to open it with a web browser. I use Chrome. Look at that. Hello world. Pretty neat, right? Now, just to quickly show you, if we change this p tag to an h1, which is a level 1 heading, we've got to change the opening and the closing tags. We save that. And now we open it. Oh, look at that. In big bold letters, hello world, because this is a level 1 heading. This, my friends, is how we use HTML to build websites. At the end of this line of tag, this is why thus concludes our brief introduction to HTML. Check out the Getting Started with HTML video to learn a little bit more about HTML. We'll actually put together an HTML file. We'll learn more about the different HTML tags, some of the attributes, how to add images, and we'll set you up to build your first website. See you next time.